Gentiles. That's the way Paul starts off chapter 3. He could have said, prisoner of Rome. He could have said, prisoner of Caesar. He didn't say anything like that. He said, prisoner of Christ Jesus. You see, he was in jail because of his faith, because of his desire to spread that faith all around the ancient world. But it wasn't Caesar who had imprisoned him. It was Jesus. If he hadn't been so committed to following Jesus, he could have been out of trouble. And so as far as Paul was concerned, the imprisonment was down to Jesus. Therefore, Jesus would take the consequences. Jesus would get him out of prison, whether dead or alive. Paul's life wasn't his own any longer. He'd been swept off his feet by the love of Jesus, and now it belonged to somebody else. Somebody who was responsible for looking after Paul, for taking care of all of the issues of his life. And so Paul could relax. He wasn't a prisoner of Rome. He was a prisoner of Jesus. There was a great man in America in the early 19th century called Henry Toho. And Toho was sent to prison one day because he refused to pay his taxes to help the Americans fight a war in Mexico. As far as he was concerned, it was simply spread slavery, which he was adamantly opposed to, into yet another country. And so he went to jail rather than support what he saw as an unjust cause. And he was behind bars when his friend, the poet Ralph Waldo Emerson, came to see him. Emerson looked at him and said, Henry, what are you doing there? And Henry looked at him quite unashamed and said, no, Ralph, the question is, what are you doing out there? Because he knew that Emerson shared his sympathies. And as far as he was concerned, he should have been a prisoner in the same way. Because when your convictions, when your loyalties, when your affections drive you in a certain direction, it's not the authorities that are making you a prisoner. It's the whole of your life, the logic of your existence. And so he knew, and Paul knew as well, that he would not have been in that position if it wasn't for some overmastering force that had taken charge of his life. And of course we've seen already, haven't we, through this whole series in Ephesians, how Paul sees not just what's happening around him on earth, but the heavenly reasons behind it all. So he says, no, I'm not a prisoner of Rome, I'm a prisoner of Jesus. He's the one who's in control of the situation. He's the one who's organising what's going on. And as a result, things are happening that are not necessarily anything to do with anybody else but Paul and Jesus, and it's between the two of them. Listen, what situation will you get into today that you wouldn't be in if you weren't a follower of Jesus Christ? Good question for us to ask as we go into today, don't you think?